Welcome back to Cal Park Bros. Jason and I are fresh off the segment discussing the life and times of one Queen Elizabeth. Coming up in segment two, we're going to be talking about Major League Baseball and some of these new rule changes coming out in 2023. And some of these that are already been tested at like the minor league level, right, Jason?
Correct.
And so, and I feel like we've even talked about at least one of these already, which is the pitch timer. That seems to be the big one that it gets everybody charged up. Is the idea that pitchers would actually have to be on some sort of clock. And I know there's a big to do about, especially for, the diehards, what I call them, the baseball purists, about defensive shift limits and bigger bases. But to me, the star of the show is the pitch timer, because, and keep in mind, I haven't been to a baseball game in probably 4 years. What are we? And Jason, I'll go on a limb and say you've probably been to a baseball game before I have, at least within the last 2 years, right?
I'd say so. I was the last one I was at was last September.
Okay.
Yes, I was there. Yep.
All right. So, does the game really feel like it drags that much when pitchers are kind of just winding up and kind of going through their motions or rotations or what have you? Does it feel like a long time to you?
Well, before I go into my opinions, I'll kind of throw that back at you and say, don't you feel that when you're watching the games? And as much as you and other individuals have complained about the length of baseball games, I think the answer to that question for a lot of people, including you, is yes. Now, I'll say this: on each individual pitch, it may not seem like it's a big deal, but when you keep in mind that just for once, keep in mind there's about 250 pitches being thrown during a game in general. It could be between 200 and 250, what have you. So take all those pitches thrown, add in an extra 30 seconds on each one of them, and there you go. You and I were talking about this yesterday in particular, and we were talking about how long the pitchers are going to have to actually make pitches. 15 seconds. Between pitches, there will be a 15-second timer with the bases empty and 20 seconds with the runners on base. So that's going to speed up a whole lot. They're not going to have time to, they'll throw their pitch. They're not going to have time to mess around with their crotch or nothing like that. Mess around with the dirt or whatever, changing their gum, mess around with their cap, blowing signs to the broad in the stands. They're not going to be doing none of that. No. It's like, let's go. You got the ball back. You know what pitch you're going to throw. Communicate with your catcher. Throw the damn ball. That's it. So I think once we actually see this live on air next year, these rule changes are for next year, that's when people who watch the game will be able to see, okay, here's the difference. And you might be able to get like a side-by-side clock of the same pitcher saying, okay, this is his routine in 2022 before. Here's his routine now based off the clock. So a couple more insights into this. A pitcher must begin his motion to deliver the pitch before the expiration of the clock. So it's like once that clock hits 0, you have to already be in the windup of throwing your pitch. So basically even less than 15 seconds. This is the cool thing. Pitchers who violate the timer are charged with an automatic ball. You only get 4. If you're going to waste one of them on the pitch clock, then that's your fault. Now, I also want to throw in there's a clock for hitters too. Because sometimes hitters are more egregious when it comes to wasting time. So they might take a couple extra. So the one batter gets out, and all of a sudden the next batter's up. Clock starts. The one batter, as of right now, might be in the on deck circle, taking extra swings, practice swings, whatnot, taking his mosey on up to the plate, taking sweet time, looking at his own dugout, getting calls, looking at the opposing dugout, trying to be a tough guy, looking at the base coach, trying to get the signs for what's going down, and now he's up in the batter's area. Now he's kind of staring down the pitchers, see if he's getting ready. He might have one foot in the box, no, but he's not ready to go. So 30-second timer for the hitters is you have to be ready to go in the box, ready to go. And in fact, batters must be in the box and alert to the pitcher by the 8-second mark, or else be charged with an automatic strike. So you have the entirety of 30 seconds, but you got to be ready to go by the 8-second mark. Like in the box, ready to go. So they're not
Okay.
messing around. So they're not messing around with this.
So
So
I have a stupid question. Um, like, will this clock be subject to replay?
good question. Just looking in kind of the. Uh, that's a good question. I don't see anything in the article talking about it. I would have to imagine. I don't even speculate. That's actually a really good question, Terrence. And I don't know. The article doesn't mention anything. I don't see anything else I read about it that did indicate that. Um, that may be something we don't find out until next season when it becomes it becomes an issue. Um, I will say this: when I was working in the minor league system and going to games and saw the clock, in action. Now, granted, this may not be the case every single stadium, but from what I saw, they were on the ball with the clock. Like, so the pitcher got the ball back, clock started. Same thing with soon the heroes up, clock started. They're now granted, I didn't really notice the hit clock so much as the pitch clock, but they were definitely on point with the pitch clock. They were on like I was watching it, like okay, they're on point with this. They're not messing around. I was watching the clock when it started. I was watching to see when it ended, see if the pitcher was getting the ball out on time, and he was. They were on the ball with that. So I do have confidence in the fact that the MLB will be the same way because especially the first year, because there's going to be so much scrutiny with the clock in the first place. You'll think they'll have all the processes perfected in place, seeing how that it was tested so much in the minor league baseball. It should be ready to go now that the major leagues are there. One other quick thing I'm going to throw out there real quick about the whole pitch clock thing, that mound visits, or rather pickoff moves, rather. Basically, a team is only allowed, or rather, a pitcher is only allowed to have so many pickoffs to first base now, or whatever base he's thrown to during a given batter. Basically, they have two times now where they can do a pickoff move. And if they do a third time over and it's not successful, then that runner gets to automatically move to the next base. So basically, what they're trying to do here, they're trying not to have pitchers thrown over there to first base or whatever base that they're going to 4 or 5 times before they ever throw a pitch to the batter. And you and I know we've seen that. They're trying to keep that guy at first close to the base because they don't want him getting the second on any kind of hit ball or whatever. So MLB said, you know what, this is too much. Focus on the batter. Let's go. So to me, I say kudos to this. I know you mentioned the baseball purists. I personally don't see how they have an issue with this because it makes the game better. It doesn't take away from it. But I know you have your opinion on that. We'll talk about the next one, next rule change in a second. But there you go.
I was just gonna say, I mean, in general, yes, I do want a faster game, but not at the expense of continuity of the game. Does that make sense?
No.
Why? Why
The,
not?
the definition of the word continuity, yes. What you're referring to in reference to this rule or any others, I don't get it.
So, Jason, what I'm saying is that do I want a faster game? Yes.
Mhm.
I don't want a faster game at the expense of the of the overall baseball experience suffering. Like imagine and your puzzle look is cracking me up. But and that's fine. But what I'm saying is, you know how with a lot of sports games, for example, like with baseball, they had the bigs. You know, they had like the arcade versions. With football, instead of Madden, you had NFL Blitz. With basketball, instead of NBA 2K or Live, they had NBA Street. Like you have, or versus a racing game. Instead of Gran Turismo or Forza, you're gonna have something a little more arcadey, like a Need for Speed or a Burnout Paradise. The reasons that those iterations work is because one, they are fun as hell, but also they they speed up the game without compromising the experience of whatever that sport is. And that's what I anticipate is going to happen with these rule changes. And that's why I'm saying like, hey, like yeah, for a lot of that's a lot of people, they want the game to speed up. They don't want it to speed up at the expense of the product suffering. And that's why I made that comparison with these video game arcade versus simulation types, if that makes sense.
And you legitimately think that that rule in particular with the pitch clock is going to lead to that problem. Is that what you're thinking?
No, no, I'm not saying that at
You're
all.
just hoping it doesn't.
I, what I'm saying is, I think baseball has known for some time that they have a game with no clock. Of course, was going to have issues where you know attention, especially in the era of Twitter and TikTok. Of course, they were going to have waning um, engagement. And so they're looking for ways to speed up the product because they know that it will actually help them in the long run. Now, does that mean some of these other rules may not change over time? Like, I'm really curious, for example, about the. I'm curious how they arrived at getting rid of the defensive shift.
Think about it for a second, and then you'll know why. You've seen okay, so you've obviously watched baseball, maybe not as much, but you've seen baseball games where a team will have a shift where they bring one of their infielders over to the other side of the infield. So they'll have three infielders on one side because they know a hitter more times than not hits the ball on that one side. So they want to have an extra defender to lessen the chance of him getting a hit through the infield on that side. So if MLB is now saying you can't do that anymore, what do you think is the reasoning for that to happen? What is that going to benefit?
Well, they probably want. I mean, ultimately, everybody wants more offense.
Boom. So there you go. So what are you still questioning?
What I'm questioning is that how they arrived at that, and perhaps um, some other less, I guess, defensively. Like everybody likes more offense, but I don't necessarily want. I don't. If I'm a baseball manager, I kind of want I want to make the decision if I want to be able to do that. So you're kind of taking some of the strategy out of the game.
So, folks, let's be a little clear here. So, one of the other rules that was changed is there's a limit to the number of times defenses can actually shift their infielders, as I just mentioned earlier. So, basically, here's the breakdown of that. So, basically, the four infielders, first base, second base, shortstop, third baseman, the four infielders must be within the outer boundary of the infield when the pitcher is on the rubber. Infielders may not switch sides. In other words, a team cannot reposition its best defender on the side of the infield the batter is more likely to hit the ball. It's like you have to whoever's your first baseman and second baseman are, they have to be on that left side of or the right side of the field. Whoever your shortstop and third baseman are, they are on the left side of the field. You can't switch it. That's it. The infielders are not aligned properly. If the infielders are not aligned properly at the time of the pitch, the offense can choose an automatic ball or the result of the play. This rule doesn't. Here's the interesting part I brought up the other day. This rule does not preclude a team from positioning an outfielder in the infield or the shallow outfield grass in certain situations, but it does prohibit four outfielder alignments. So basically, what they're saying is, on that first base side, where the first baseman and second baseman are, if you want to bring the right fielder in to be that third person on the infield, you can do that at the risk of you only have two of your outfielders playing in the outfield. So if the batter hits the ball out there somewhere, those guys are going to be at a disadvantage because there's only two of them covering the entire outfield. So that's a risk, but the rule doesn't preclude that from happening. So I don't see a team actually doing that, but something to think about if you ever do see it, that is something that can be allowed. Why a team would do that, they'll have to feel pretty strongly that the guy's not going to hit the ball in the air to the outfield. So but there is that. That's what the rule we're talking about there when it comes to the shifts. And yes, if anybody who knows baseball or has an imagination, you can imagine by not allowing that to happen as much or at all, it's going to have more offense. I mean, I've seen plenty of White Sox games where where their offense, somebody was in a shift, hitter hits the ball right into those three infielders, easy out, as opposed to it being a hit through the middle of the two defenders and being a base hit. So it definitely happens. I definitely see the benefit of this if you're wanting some more excitement, more runs, and that's really what both of these rules are about. And even the third one, that we can talk about is really trying to make the game faster, more exciting, more interesting. Which all the things everybody said about baseball needs to change, make it more exciting and interesting. Because the players can only do so much when it comes to making it exciting from their end. Sometimes the rules of the game have to allow it to be as well. Now, obviously, the game is a slower pace than basketball and football, or even hockey for that matter, probably soccer too for that matter. So there's only so much they can do from a game perspective. But these are small things they can do when it comes to the pitch clock, the batter clock. Those are easy things they can do. Stop all the BS time between the actual plays. Play starts whenever the pitcher throws the ball. Stop all the time that takes place between those 2 points. The pitcher throws the ball and when he throws the ball the next time. And that's what they're trying to do. And again, it's worked at the minor league level, which is why they bring it up to the major league level. So it's worked. Should be any issues with this from anybody when it comes to players, managers, fans, owners, what have you, because it's helping you out. Now, whether or not it actually brings more people to the game or more interest in baseball, who knows? But at least this is an effort, a legitimate effort, and an attempt. Do you not agree with that, Terrence?
I agree I agree that Major League Baseball is for real. They know that pace definitely needs to change, and
Like Ryan Pace?
too funny. I I'm look I'm one thing you brought up, which is when I was asking you, do you notice that time? And I think one thing is that answer depends. Am I at the stadium or not?
That's actually true because when you're well, it's like any sport. It's a different experience watching on TV than you are in the stadium. But in this case, you know what? Even if you're at home watching it, it depends because you have so much stuff distracting you potentially. When you're in the stadium, you're not just sitting there watching the pitcher. When you're in a stadium, if you're there with other people, you're probably talking to other people during the pitches, looking at other stuff around the stadium at the pitches, listening to the music in the stadium, stuff like that. So you probably don't notice the time as much as you're sitting at home because if you're sitting at home, it's kind of almost like dead air in a way. I mean, yeah, you can kind of hear what's going on in the stadium, but it's not the same as being there. So you're almost focused on what's going on in the field when it comes to the pitcher, goofing around between pitches, the batter goofing around between pitches, people twiddling their thumbs, grabbing their crotches, stuff like that, spitting, whatever. So, so yeah, you'll probably notice the time more at home. Now, the other difference though is when you're in the stadium, you can actually see that clock counting down. And I almost guarantee you, just like I was looking at the clock when I first noticed it at the minor league games next year, there's going to be plenty of people in the stands looking at the clock to see, at least at first, to see how closely they are actually following the rules of the clocks going forward. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think all of this is going to make for a progressive approach to speed. But I also think that we have a lot of theory. This has never been actually conducted in an entire major league season. So once the season is actually completed, it's like with anything else. You look at NFL rules, you look at hockey rules, look at basketball rules. People will look at, okay, here's what the rule says, and then ultimately you also have the interpretation of the rule and its impact on the game. Prime example: defining a catch in the National Football League.
One real quick, there was one last rule change or implementation change in Major League Baseball. Was they made the bases bigger, first, second, and third. So the change will create a 4.5-inch reduction in the distance between first and second base, and between second and third. And the goal of this is to try to encourage more stolen bases. 4.5 inches doesn't sound like a big deal.
Hi-yo.
Yeah. I was if Terrence didn't make the joke, I was going to. So it's what it is. But but yeah. But it doesn't sound like a big deal, and I think most women will probably give you 4.5 inches isn't a big deal. But hey, but anyway. So yeah. But at the same time though, if that small little difference is more encouraging for somebody to try stealing bases, I'm not saying we'll get back to the days of Ricky Henderson stealing 90 bases a season, but by comparison, back in those days of the 90s, people don't steal bases as much as they used to. And to a certain degree, that was some of the excitement of the game. Is people were like, okay, is he going to, oh, here goes Ricky. He's going to steal. Oh, let's see if is he going to make it? So some of that was the excitement. Now, also, too, and combined with the fact there's going to be less pickoff opportunities, combined with the smaller base path and the fact that pitchers can't throw to first base and pick off people as much anymore, those two things are going to possibly encourage more stolen bases. So now that I'm actually thinking about it, this one's kind of interesting as well, because this could encourage more stolen bases. Now, we'll have to see, but I think it could work. Again, not saying we'll go back to somebody stealing 90 a season, but I think if we get somebody stealing more than 10, I think we'll be okay.
I just like that, there's a safety angle to this one. You think about a lot of those weird, freak accidents at second base when people are trying to, steal a base or third. And it's like, okay, clearly you got two entities trying to compete for this space. And anything that actually reduces injuries typically is a good thing.
Agreed.
All right. That concludes our review of these Major League Baseball rule changes coming up in 2023. Coming up next in our last segment for this episode, we'll be talking about the Jackson, Mississippi water crisis. Coming up next on Cal Park Bros.